couple months back, I was up late playing video games. It was about 3:30 a.m. I had been playing for several hours at this point, and I started to feel restless from sitting there for so long. So I decided to go for a walk. I live just outside a relatively small and quiet town in Ireland, and being a grown-ass man in my 20s, I figured I didn't have any reason to fear being out for a walk this late, and I have done so plenty times in the past. I put on my jacket, grabbed my headphones, and started out on my usual path, following the road outside of my house and onto a bypass on the edge of town. The air was crisp and refreshing. The road lit well from the streetlights, and it seemed like it was going to be a pleasant walk. The bypass has a footpath on one side that's on a sort of hill, so it's slightly elevated from the road. Hugging the footpath is a small wooded area that's near pitch black at night. I was looking down at my phone, contemplating what song I wanted to play next, when I noticed the legs of a person whom I'm almost walked into. I was caught off guard, since just moments ago I had been looking ahead of me, and I hadn't seen anyone at all. I glanced up to see an older man in a brown coat. He looked to be in his 70s, and was a bit shorter than me, with an unreadable expression on his face. He says something which I barely hear through my headphones, but I thought I heard him say something like "doggy." Assuming this man was simply out looking for a lost pet, I took off my headphones and said, "I haven't seen any dogs, sorry." He then repeats what he said. His voice was high-pitched with a strong accent, and I still couldn't make out what he was saying, despite now lacking my headphones, but the final word became clearer. "Daddy." I asked him to repeat himself, turning my ear to him and leaning in slightly closer to hear him better. It was only now I had noticed a strong petrol smell coming from him. He breathed in sharply and spoke again. This time I was able to make out what he was saying. "Are you my daddy?" I didn't know how to react to that. Part of me saw some humor in the scenario. I'm a third his age and he's asking if I'm his dad. The other part of me was a mixture of confused and uneasy. After a moment of confused silence, I said, "No, do you need help finding someone?" I really just wanted to keep walking, but what if this clearly disorientated old man genuinely needed help? After another sharp inhale, he says, "Where's my daddy?" Still uneasy about this whole thing, I tell him I don't know and ask where he last seen whoever it was he was searching for. He pauses for a second, then points into the dark wooded area. I looked over where he was pointing, but it was far too dark to see anything. I started to think about how to proceed with the situation, when I notice his face turn into a scowl as he grumbles something, and he reaches into his pocket and takes out what looks like some wet rolled up fabric. Upon closer inspection, however, I realize it was actually a small dead bird. He looks at it, grumbled again, then looks back at me. I was trying to decide if I should call someone or just go. All I knew was that I wasn't equipped to deal with this. I looked down to my phone, then snap. A noise like a large twig breaking happens to my right in the wooded area, followed by a very distinct and human shushing noise. Every alarm in my body is going off now. I quickly say, "I don't think I can help you," and I start walking fast towards the town, which turns into a full-on sprint when I hear footsteps emerging from the trees behind me. As I reach the crossing, I glance back to see a hefty, bald man guiding the other guy into the trees while staring over at me. The beam of a torch now piercing out from the wooded area. I cut through town and I ran back home. Looking back, it's hard to say if I was in any actual danger, or if I just stumbled upon a mentally ill old guy who had got out of his house. I checked the news for a couple of days afterwards to see if there was anything on a missing elder in my town, but I came up with nothing. I haven't seen him since or heard anyone I know mention anything about a creepy old guy. Anyways, thanks for letting me share my weird encounter. If any of you are interested, I can go back to the bypass I was on and take some pictures of it so you can see where it actually happened. About 3 weeks ago, my mom told my brother and I this story. Straight up gave me the yucky feeling. Sally is a lifelong family friend, and she would frequently visit her friends and family in Oklahoma. We live in a small town in southern Ontario, Canada. She would drive straight 20 hours at least overnight to get from our town to another small town. She did this simply to save money and obviously wanted to arrive as soon as she could. About 30 years ago, she decided to head south on a visit. No big deal, she's done this a few times. Well, she packs up and heads out. At some point after driving about 14 or 15 hours, she started getting pretty tired. Being as it was probably the 80s, it seemed a little safer. She decided that she would stop at a rest stop. It was more of a traveler's stop, my mom said, to sleep for a little bit and resume her drive first thing in the morning. She parks in a very well-lit and busy rest stop. She parks right by the lights and felt at ease because there was an abundance of travelers stopping and going. She gets out for a bathroom break, comes back and settles in her car. About then, an RV pulls up beside her and an elderly couple get out. The man asks her about coming from Canada. They strike up a little conversation. Nothing odd. The couple talk to Sally for a bit. They tell her they are driving from the south, going north, and just needed to have a sleep for the night. They wanted to talk because they were unsure if a rest stop was okay to stop at. But seeing Sally, they were at ease. They said good night and good trip, and the couple went back in their RV. Sally locked her doors up and went to sleep. 2 or 3 hours later, Sally woke up with a really unsettling feeling. She looks around, but nothing. People are pulling into the rest stop. Parking lights are all on. She assumes that she is feeling bad because she's tired and a car isn't the best to sleep in. After 10 minutes, she said that this feeling actually got worse, and it was a jarring, queasy, uneasy feeling. She sits back and tries to shrug it off, but this doesn't work, and apparently she had every red alarm and instinct telling her that she needs to go. She panics, starts her car, and peels off. She doesn't care where, she just knows that she had to get away from there. So about 20 miles down the road, she finds a motel and gas station. She decides to see if she could get a room for what little money she had. She converses with the person in charge. He cuts her a deal, and he doesn't want a young woman driving alone at night. She gets a key, pops in her hotel room, and sleeps for the night. No issues, all in peace. Around 9 a.m., she wakes up, showers, changes clothes, and decides to relax for a few. She turns on the TV, and what was on it actually gave me chills. There was a breaking news story about an elderly couple killed in the middle of the night. The news showed the RV that Sally was parked next to. Exact spot, exact rest stop. And she sees the fast food drink cup that she dropped on accident that rolled under her car. Sometime during the night, a man broke into their RV and killed them and then left. Presumably right before Sally had left. The man was never caught. Sally since then stopped at hotels for the night and avoided rest stops. So last night, I was at a classmate's house working on a group project that we have due tomorrow. I live in an apartment in the town where our university is located, and my classmate lives at his parents' house, which is in the foothills just outside of town. In order to get to the house, you have to drive along a relatively secluded and narrow 2-lane road for about 6 miles. We started working on the project at about 6 p.m., and I ended up hanging out around for a while after we finished our work. So I left his house pretty late at about 11 and started down the road back towards town. I didn't realize how tough it would be to navigate the road at night. There were no streetlights and the road was unkept and riddled with potholes. On top of this, I had no cell service, so I had to drive very slowly to make sure I didn't blow out one of my tires, since I had used my spare a couple of weeks back. I figure I was about 3 miles from the house when I rounded a tight corner and saw a pickup truck with a camper shell parked diagonally across the road. The manner in which it was parked completely impeded my path, and I couldn't drive around it because there was a gully on both sides of the road. The only way for me to go at this point was backward, where there was a pull-off that I could use to turn my car around. At first, I couldn't see inside the cab, but when I turned on my high beams, I saw that there was a man slouched over in the driver's seat, his head resting against the steering wheel as if he had been knocked out after a bad accident. I immediately sensed something was wrong. The way his car had just coincidentally come to rest in a position that totally blocked the road was a big red flag for me. I had heard stories of people playing dead in the road as a way to lure unsuspecting people out of their cars so they could rob them. I decided, fuck this shit, and I elected to go back to my classmate's house and explain what was going on. I threw the car into reverse and kept my eyes darting back and forth between my rearview mirror and the truck. I looked and saw that I was almost to the pull-off where I could turn around. When I looked back, my heart skipped about 5 beats. The man who had been slouched over in the driver's seat was now walking at my car. at a hurried pace, while a few other men jumped out of the camper shell and started moving towards me as well. I panicked and accelerated backwards into the pull-off, which messed up the undercarriage of my car pretty bad. As I put it into drive, the guy was already at my passenger side door, tugging on the handle, which, thank the Lord, was locked. I only caught a brief glimpse of him, but his face appeared to be scabbed and leathery. Definitely a meth head or some sort of drug abuser. I sped away, and I didn't slow down at all until I reached the house, constantly checking my rear view to see if they were following. Thankfully, they didn't tell me, and when I reached the house, I explained what had happened to my classmate, and we called the cops. I was grateful that my buddy's parents were kind enough to let me stay the night. They didn't find anyone on the road matching the description, but I filed an incident report, and they told me that they would be on the lookout for similar vehicles and suspicious activity. But holy shit, I'm still so shook up over it. I keep getting the same adrenaline rush I got when I saw the guy charging me whenever I think about it.